Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane. Great to have all of you with us today. We join together to create a nourishing liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Welcome to one and all. I want to begin, as usual, by welcoming all that you bring with you, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs, background, lifestyle, experiences, your differences, your kitchen sink, everything that helps make you who you are is welcome here this morning. And this, of course, includes those who hear me say this each Sunday, as well as those who are joining us for the first time. Welcome to all of you. I also want to welcome everybody who is in the room with me here today. Barbara Nelson is our lay leader today. Thank you so much. Glad to have you. Michelina Tyrese over here working the piano as usual. Thank you. Deb Jackman. Great to have our music director with us. And Bob and Sonny Cook are actually back working our slide presentation this morning. Thank you all so much for being here and helping with that. And if there's any gremlins, we're not going to hold you too accountable. So we just appreciate you being here. Yes. Yes, and Todd Milne, I wanted to, last but not least, who we always get to hear his presence because he gets us started with his extraordinary talent in music. So Todd, thank you so much for being here, sharing your talent and also running our audiovisual system. So again, welcome to one and all. Let's see, quick announcements before we greet one another. I want to remind you about our virtual social hour, which takes place after our service, and due to popular request, it is now going to start immediately following the service, so you don't have to wait until 12:30 necessarily. You can click on the link and enter that virtual room at your leisure following the service. Again, you'll find that link in the weekly email that the church sends to you with a variety of links. If you type in UUCS in your search bar, it should come up. And then another reminder that we're going to have a very special service on October 25th, in which we will be having a joint service with that other UUCS, the UU Church of Salem in Oregon. And I think our friends at Coeur d'Alene are going to join us as well. If some of you are listening today, I just got the link today, so we'll be getting that out this week to everybody, and we hope that you will join us as well as anyone else who might be interested. But that service is going to really focus on guest speaker Irshad Manji, who is the author of several books, including Don't Label Me, about not labeling people, about not getting so caught up in identity politics and ethics that we drive our friends away from us. So really looking forward to being part of that and hearing from her. That service is going to take place again on the 25th. It's going to start early. It's going to start at 10:30 a.m., which is the time services start in Salem, but it is going to end at noon, which is when our services end. So we're each going to gain a half hour and turn it into a 90-minute service so we can take full advantage of a discussion with Irshad Manji. So I hope you'll join us for that. But for now, why don't you have a discussion with somebody that you look forward to checking in with, maybe through your cell phone or email or a quick phone call, as we take our usual moment to greet one another this morning. Okay, thank you, and I hope that you'll continue to greet one another throughout the week. I'm kind of smiling because Sunny Cook just came up and, of course, watches the service at home, so she's giving us tips to help us improve how we orchestrate things, including what I know some of you have been thinking, that if we're going to hit this gong, we need to hit it loud enough for you to hear, because it's not mic'd and you probably don't hear it. So in some cases, we're just banging it by rote, so I apologize for that. And I just cracked it, but we won't hit it that hard. Thank you, Sonny. So we are going to move forward now by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our faith, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need. And may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
Come, no matter where you are this crisp autumn morning, let us worship together with our minds open to the challenge of reason, our hearts open to the healing of love, our lives open to the calling of conscience, and our souls open to the comfort of joy. Come, let us worship together.
Thank you so much. We are now going to kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our thoughts and minds. And I did get a request this week, a candle for Darrell van der Linden and his mother, Dorothy van der Linden, who is under hospice care in the Comfort House in Pala, Iowa. He and his siblings are gathering there now to be with her, so please keep Darrell, his mother, and their entire family in your thoughts at this difficult time. Let's take a moment of silence as usual on behalf of others that you might be thinking of, and if you're with someone at home and want to say their names aloud, you're welcome to do so. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we are now going to have our story for all ages. So I welcome you to get comfortable. I will see who has come to help me out this morning. Okay, hey, look who it is. It is my old pal, Goofy. Goofy, it's great to see you. Well, it's great to see you. Well, thank you. So what brings you here today, Goofy? Well, my shoes. Your shoes, you mean you walked here? I sure did, one step at a time. Well, that's good. That's a healthy way to get around. So What exactly is on your mind today?
Well, my hat.
Well, we can see that you have a hat on your head. Everybody loves your wonderful hat. But I mean, what are you thinking about? You must be here for a reason.
Yes, sirree. I came to give my opinion.
Came to give your opinion.
Yup.
Well, what opinion do you want to give?
Well, does it matter?
Well, no, it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Your opinion does. I'm just asking, what is it that's on your mind? What exactly would you like to give?
Well, I don't really have any particular opinion.
You don't have a particular opinion. I'm afraid, Goofy, that I don't understand. You came all of this way. You say to give your opinion, but you don't have anything particular on your mind.
Well, of course I do.
You do? Okay, well then what is it?
I already told you. My hat.
Your hat is on your head. Your opinions are in your head.
Oh, I thought that was just some water from my shower this morning.
No. I just mean that an opinion is something that you're thinking about and something that you'd like to share with others.
Well, I'd like to share my lunch with others.
Well, that's pretty kind of you, but lunch is food, not an opinion. An opinion is the thoughts in your head that you want to share with your words.
There's nothing in my head but a little extra water.
Well, you must have an opinion on something. Let's see. What about politics? Did you watch the vice presidential debate this week?
Was it on the Disney Channel?
No, I don't think it was.
Well, then I don't think I watched it.
Okay. Well, what about the election itself? Who do you want to win?
Well, who's running?
Well, I guess you're not really into politics. Okay. Hey, what about the weather? Everybody's got an opinion about the weather.
Not me. Rain or shine, and Goofy's fine.
Okay. Well, I'm getting a little bit confused, Goofy. You said you walked all the way here to give your opinion, but you don't seem to have any opinions to give.
Well, I heard this was a place where everyone's opinions can be shared, but I didn't think to bring one of my own. Maybe you can give me one of your opinions.
Well, I'm sure I could, but that's not really how it works, Goofy. We certainly welcome all opinions here, but we don't tell others what they should think.
You don't?
Nope. We want you to be able to think for yourself.
Well, hey, I like that idea. Think for myself.
That is a good one. You know what, Goofy?
I sure do. What?
Well, I think you just shared your opinion.
Well, I can't wait to get back and tell Nicky Mouse.
Well, that's probably a good idea. And while you're at it, why don't you give Donald Duck a piece of your mind, too?
Well, I don't think there's enough of it to go around.
Okay, Goofy, thank you. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
The following reading is from A Pocket Full of Miracles, Prayers, Meditations, and Affirmations by Joan Boroshenko. In the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, Jesus' disciples asked him, "How can we realize the kingdom within? Do you want us to fast? How should we pray? Shall we give alms? What diet shall we observe?" And Jesus replies, "Do not tell lies, and do not do what you hate." From William Shakespeare's Hamlet, Act 1, Scene 3. "This above all, to thine own self be true, and it follows as the night follows the day that thou cannot be false to any man." Finally, ask yourself if the things you did yesterday and this morning are in accord with your deepest beliefs and what you feel your life purpose is.
In lieu of my reading this morning, I'm going to share a little story with you. Our operations manager, Rebecca Adams, who's just doing an extraordinary job. We're so fortunate to have her with us. She has a couple of young sons, and they come to work with her on occasion. And they were here this week, and her son Draven came up in the pulpit, and while they were doing some work in the sanctuary, and Rebecca took a photograph of Draven standing here about yay high at the pulpit, and I wanted to read what she says. I wish I could show you the picture, but it's too tiny. But she says, I told Draven to pretend to be a minister. He starts preaching. It doesn't matter your skin color, hair, clothes, or jackets. Everyone is important to God. Nice message from the mouths of babes. Thank you, Michelina. So the title of my sermon today is Remaining Enlightened in an Age of Endarkenment. Several years ago, Peggy and I put a small amount of money on a home in Louisville that we intended to buy, which would have been forfeited if we backed out of the agreement without cause, which is kind of standard when you're looking at a house. But on the day of the home inspection, we arrived to discover that the house had been broken into only the night before, which didn't bode well and made us feel uneasy about it and the neighborhood it was in. We wanted out. Fortunately for us, there were several fireplaces in the house, all of which had been filled with concrete, rendering them unusable, a genuine disappointment for us. We asked that they be restored before moving forward with the purchase. The real estate agent said to do so, they would have to tear the entire house down and start over again. To a mix of relief and disappointment, we got out of the deal along with our deposit. Today, we live in a nation that hasn't been the best sort of deal for a lot of folks, some of whom have been discriminated against or otherwise disadvantaged because of identity issues like race, gender, religion, sexuality, and some who've been hindered by growing economic disparity. When we see the continued deaths of unarmed black men and women at the hands of police officers, or see our courts, including the Supreme Court, being unfairly packed with conservative ideologues, some of whom just this week lashed out against the court's 2015 recognition of gay marriage, favoring instead what they consider the religious freedom to practice discrimination. And when we discover that our own president, a supposed billionaire, pays less income taxes than most of us do, who can blame us for wanting out of the deal? The question is, how far should we go to do so? The group of men arrested earlier this week in an elaborate plot to kidnap Michigan's governor, then start a civil war to take over the government, wanted to tear the entire house down and start over again. It's one thing to replace broken windows, significant perhaps of the paradigms through which we see and act in the world, or to upgrade old plumbing and electrical wiring or HVAC and other antiquated systems that don't work anymore. But it's another thing to tear the entire structure down in order to replace its very foundation. Before going to such dramatic measures, we first need to determine if the foundation is still sound and if the real problem is that the house has shifted. It no longer rests squarely upon its still solid foundation. Does the house need to be demolished or just reset? Does our society need to be entirely reconstructed and rebuilt from the ground up? Or do we need to be reminded of the foundational values upon which it was supposed to be erected? Values we still claim are ours, even if we seldom live up to them anymore. These values have historically been summed up in one word: Enlightenment, referring to the 17th and 18th centuries' age of reason, when they began flourishing throughout Western society. Enlightenment isn't a word that's used much anymore, and when it is, it often refers to something other than what it historically signified. Someone might say, "Thanks for enlightening me on any sort of a subject," or feel they have become enlightened, being that they've embraced perhaps New Age spirituality, for example, or some other exotic and alternative religion. The fact that we don't think much about enlightenment anymore or quite understand what it means when we do may itself be a sign that our society as a whole is losing its connection to the defining principles it was founded upon. Things have shifted, and the entire structure of our society has become or remains unstable and uninhabitable for too many in our nation. And I have no reluctance, in theory, with moving on from the past, especially when our old ideas and ways no longer serve us, or worse, have become detrimental to our growth and progress. Moving on is what being progressive is supposed to be all about. But to be all about something means it must also be rooted in something. And if uprooted from that something, it dies and ceases to exist. If our nation is no longer rooted in the values first discovered during Antiquity, then rediscovered during the Renaissance, then went on to flourish during the Enlightenment, including by inspiring the founders of this nation, then it will perish. Maybe that's what we're witnessing today, the death of our nation due to the same kind of internal cancer that has destroyed other great civilizations in the past. At best, we're facing a period of endarkenment that can be lifted if we ignite a modern Renaissance, another renewal of the perennial values that the greatest among us have lived by and aspired to live by throughout the past 3 millennia. What exactly are these Enlightenment values I'm talking about? They need to be made explicit for us to examine the soundness of this foundation. In his book, Wisdom of the West, philosopher Bertrand Russell says, Enlightenment was essentially a revaluation of independent intellectual activity, aimed quite literally at spreading light where hitherto darkness had prevailed. At its core, he characterized this historic shift by its generally tolerant attitude to those that might be following different traditions. This was especially true regarding differing religious viewpoints. But he goes on to say, this new attitude in matter of belief had far-reaching political consequences that opposed unchecked authority in every sphere, including in government. In addition, Russell says, Enlightenment was bound up with the spread of scientific knowledge, just as in the sphere of religion, Protestantism had thrown up the idea that everyone should use his own judgment, so in the scientific field, men must now look at nature for themselves rather than put blind trust in the pronouncements of those who stood for old established doctrines. In brief, Russell defines these Enlightenment values as toleration, freedom, reason, and science. If so, then the question before us is, are these values what's wrong with our society today? Must we tear down the entire house to get at it and destroy this faulty foundation in order to start completely over again? Or should we reset the unsettled and shifting house more firmly upon it? Are toleration, freedom, reason, and science still our values, or are they our problem? When our particular church was founded in 1887, our bylaws stated, the authority of its belief is reason. The method of finding its beliefs is scientific. Its aim is to crush superstition and establish the facts of religion, and its first principle is freedom of opinion and is subject to no censure for heresy. Is that our problem? Or is this still what we're about? Have we already torn down the entire house? Has it been rebuilt into something else? I hope not. I still think of myself as a Renaissance minister and ours as an Enlightenment church, given that Unitarianism itself was constructed upon this foundation. Last year, a team from the Unitarian Universalist Association was pushed upon our community to assess, we are told, the health of our congregation. They concluded that ours was a broken congregation in need of healing, repair, and rebuilding. I disagreed then and still disagree with this so-called assessment. For the most part, ours is a congregation that still rests firmly upon its original foundation, standing firm as a shining example of our rich history and Enlightenment values. We need only to recover from last year's attempt by some to tear our house down. Rather than repair and rebuilding, we need to be reminded of who we are, what we stand for, what we stand firmly upon. And we can be grateful for the tumult we have recently endured because it now requires us, each one of us, to re-examine what we're about, what our church is about, and our own reasons for being here. Are we still a liberal religious community built upon the firm foundation of tolerance, freedom, reason, and science? Or have we shifted entirely into something else, something unrecognizable, just as the Unitarian Universalist Association has become, by punishing and censuring those heretics and dissenters who challenge it? In his recent article, Kneeling at the Church of Social Justice, Columbia University professor and contributor to The Atlantic, John McWhorter, complains that social justice philosophy has morphed into a kind of religious cult. Part of what I'm calling the Endarkenment, he refers to as TWR, Third Wave Anti-Racism, which he says has different methods and attitudes from anti-racism waves that previously worked against slavery and segregation. TWR, he says, focuses on psychological rather than the institutional. In his 2018 Atlantic article, Virtue Signalers Won't Change the World, he says, this focus on the psychological has morphed of late from a pragmatic mission to change minds into a witch hunt driven by the personal benefits of virtue signaling, obsessed with unconscious and subconscious bias. In his more recent article on the cultish nature of what he calls this phenomenon of hypersensitivity and how widespread it has become, McWhorter says explicitly, Unitarianism has been all but taken over in many places by modern anti-racist theology, forcing the resignation of various ministers and other figures. These resignations, in my excommunication, are happening because, as McWhorter says, the new faith also manifests itself in objections to what its adherents process as dissent. The Unitarian Universalist Association no longer permits criticism of its new dogma, even though dissent epitomizes the spirit, if not the very definition of the Enlightenment principles Unitarianism is founded upon, and that until now have sustained our once free and liberal religion. In his 1784 essay, An Answer to the Question, What is Enlightenment?, Immanuel Kant wrote, nothing is required for this enlightenment except freedom. And the freedom in question is the least harmful of all, namely, the freedom to use reason publicly in all matters. The freedom to use reason publicly in all matters. That's what the Enlightenment is. It means, in simple terms, the freedom to think and speak for oneself. And such freedom requires the right of dissent. Enlightenment, he says, is man's emergence from his self-imposed immaturity. Immaturity is the inability to use one's understanding without guidance from another. This immaturity is self-imposed when its cause lies not in a lack of understanding, but in a lack of resolve and courage to use it without guidance from another. Dare to know. Have courage to use your own understanding. That is the motto of Enlightenment. Until recently, this is what our religion has always been about. And it's the principle that has drawn many of us to it, and the principle that causes many of us to remain a part of it. It has seemed easy to remain a part of it until last year, when I was banned from the Unitarian Universalist Association's General Assembly for distributing my book of dissenting opinions. Then publicly condemned, falsely accused, censured, fired as an adjunct professor, and eventually excommunicated. All while a small number within our own congregation were working in secret with the UUA leadership to remove me from my post. Such ununitarian and unenlightened behavior shocked all of us as we tried to figure out what the hell was happening. Some left because the coup failed. Some left disillusioned. Such could happen in a UU church to begin with. Some left sad or angry. And some are still wondering if there's any reason to return or to even stay. I know this because I too am sad and angry and continue to ask myself if it's worth being part of such a religion anymore. Being part of a church is great when it's easygoing, when there's no strife and everyone is on the same page. But we're now in an age of encroaching endarkenment, in which the principle of dissent is no longer valued, not even by the very religion birthed to uphold it. The founders of this church, who constructed it upon the foundations of tolerance, freedom, reason, and science, promising there would be no censure for heresy, would surely be dismayed if they could have seen 133 years ahead to find that these values are no longer flourishing in our world. But they would also be relieved to see the minister of their church continuing to stand for what they stood for. And they would be extremely proud of the great majority of you who have also remained standing for the principles they entrusted to you. You noble souls, how bright and beautiful you shine. I'm so humbled to be in your good company and proud to occupy this esteemed and historic pulpit that I am undeserving of. The reasons I consider ours a new age of encroaching endarkenment should also be clear by now, because we live at a time when thinking for ourselves is discouraged, if not punished, on many fronts, including both the left and the right. We have a Republican president who has frequently threatened to withhold federal funding to states with Democratic governors for that explicit reason. We have CNN and MSNBC on the left and Fox News and Rush Limbaugh on the right as merely examples of far-reaching propagandists who spend 24 hours, 7 days a week attacking those that their sides disagree with. American universities are firing professors for saying things their students find offensive. Social media has provided the masses a tool for digital mobs to lash out against those that they disagree with, destroying their reputations and livelihoods while fashioning feedback bubbles for themselves to keep them safe from hearing anything that they don't believe. This is why, in a society that discourages us from thinking for ourselves, we must, as Kant says, remember the motto of Enlightenment: have courage to use your own understanding. This is so for everyone in our society, but it's especially true for Unitarian Universalists because this is our foundation. It is what we have claimed and still claim that we are all about: a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. It's always been hard living in a society that gravitates towards groupthink, but until now, we were encouraged knowing that we weren't alone, that we have been part of something larger pushing back against these forces of darkness. But now its long shadow and foul stench has entered what we thought was our sanctuary. It's not going to be easy for us anymore. Some may want to slip away, but there's really nowhere safe from the shadow of endarkenment. The only solution we have is to shine a light upon it, and that means having the courage to think for ourselves, and as Kant says, to do so publicly. This is what I have strived to do despite the tremendous pushback against me, despite the assault on my character and threat to my livelihood. And it is what you have done by remaining part of this congregation and supporting the time-honored freedom of our pulpit. I am humbled and grateful and encouraged by you. I am also encouraged to witness an increasing number of today's luminaries speaking out against endarkenment. People like John McWhorter, who is among over 150 who signed a recent letter published in Harper's Magazine expressing their concern that the free exchange of information and ideas, the lifeblood of a liberal society, is daily becoming more constricted. So even if the Unitarian Universalist Association is now on the wrong side of history, we are not alone. Many Unitarian ministers and members share our concern, in addition to a growing number of those in society at large, and they are all finding the courage to express themselves and to push back. History has never looked fondly upon periods of groupthink, suppression, and fascism. And when it looks back upon this period, it will see our congregation standing on the right side of history, just as it has for over 130 years. As of late, we've heard a lot of noise in our house, popping and banging as it settles during the chill of night, but it remains firm upon a good foundation: tolerance, freedom, reason, science. Keep the faith. Keep shining your light. Keep thinking for yourself. Amen.
Today we'll be singing As Tranquil Streams, which I think actually fits very well with Todd's words this morning. Nicolina? And you will have the screen. As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred hearts and minds unite to build a church that shall be free, free from the bonds that bind the mind to narrow thought and lifeless greed, free from a social code that fails to serve the cause of human need, a freedom that reveres the past but trusts the dawning future more, and bids the soul in search of truth adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic church, the future waits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love,
all our lives, we are in need, and others are in need of us. So as we move into this activities of our day and this coming week, remember, be kind, be strong, be true, and be loving. Reverend Cynthia Landrum. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.